In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to get this collection of to-do records out of this table and display this data on the front end of your app in this table. To get a collection or list of to-dos out of this table on the back end of your application and then display this list on the front end of the application, we can use the get to-dos front end and back end actions. When the get to-dos front end action runs, this will trigger the back-end action, which will go and fetch the list of to-dos. This action has been pre-configured to fetch a list of to-dos that are stored inside of the to-dos table and return this collection to the front-end action, which will then map the data into this to-dos collection variable. Once the data is in the to-dos collection variable on the front end, you can choose where on the front end you want to display the data. However, because the data in the to-dos collection variable is a list of more than one to-do, we need to use something called a repeating group in order to display this information on the front end of our app. A repeating group is used to display a list of data or a collection of records on our page. Any element on our front end can be transformed into a repeating group. For example, let's say that we want to display our collection of to-dos as new rows in our to-dos table here. To do this, first navigate to the table row element using the breadcrumb trail at the bottom of the page. You can delete one of these row elements like so, and then navigate to the other. After you selected the row element like so, click on the cog and choose the repeating with option. You can then bind the table row to the collection of to-dos variable here. Notice the type of the variable is a collection and the name of the variable is set to to-dos. What this means is that for every to-do in the collection, we are going to produce a new row down the page. So, to-do number 1 in our collection variable will go into this row here. To-do item number 2 in our collection variable will go into a new row, which will be here. And to-do item number 3 in our collection variable will go into this row here, and so on and so on and so on. Now that we have the repeating group set up, we now need to also specify which element inside of the repeating group is going to display what data for each row of to-dos data. For example, in this first row, I can click on this text element here, then click the T icon, choose the variable option, and use this new repeating group option to bind my element to the to-do item value. We are not going to display the ID value anywhere on the page because this bit of information is not relevant to our users. If you're unsure where the ID column comes from, come over to the Data Models tab and you can see here that in our to-dos table, we have an ID column and a to-do item column. So these are the two columns which are available on the front end of our application inside of our collection variable. Now that we've set up our new repeating group and we've decided which element we're going to bind to the to-do item value, I now need to trigger the front end action that's going to trigger the back end action that will fetch the list of to-dos from my to-dos table. To do this, click on the table element and then go over to the lightning bolt icon as usual. Click Add Front-End Action, and this time, instead of choosing the on-click option, choose the trigger Component Did Mount. This means that whenever the element on the page loads, this will trigger the front-end action to run. Finally, select the front-end action Get All To-Dos. Now, whenever the table element mounts onto the page, this will trigger the front-end action, which will start the back-end action, which will reach inside of the database, grab the data, and send it back to the front end, which will then display the data as a repeating group. To test this out, let's build the code. Once the code has been built, try refreshing the front end of the live app, and you'll see a list of all the to-dos loaded in from the back end in the table on our front end, like so. Now, if I then create a new to-do using the text input box here and clicking Add New To-Do, I can then refresh my page and this new to-do is also going to display inside of the table like so. However, I would like to add a new feature to my app so that whenever I click this Add to Do button, the table will automatically refresh. This can be done really easily by modifying the action that is triggered when I click the Add to Do button. So go back inside Didify and let's check out what action is triggered when I click on this button. So you can see this under the lightning bolt icon over here, and we can see that we set this up so that when we click on this button, the action Create New To Do item is going to run. So if I go over to my front end actions, I can search and find this action over here. This action is currently connecting to my back end using this run endpoint event. It's then doing a check on the data that's passed back from my front end event. So in order to add a refresh feature, I can simply add a new event to this action, and the event that I'm going to add is going to be called a run action event. So this event allows you to run other actions. So I can choose here the Get To Do's action. So now whenever my Create New To Do item action runs, this is going to create a new item, and then it's going to run my front end action Get To Do's, which is then going to fetch all of my new to-dos out of my to-dos table on the back end. So if I save this down and then I exit the action, I can then go over to rebuild my code by clicking Build Code. Now, once the code has been built, I can go over to the live app and click the refresh button again. This will reload the front end of my app. Now, whenever I add a new to-do and click the Add To-Dos button here, this is going to add a new to-do to my table on my back end. But as you can see here, this is also going to refresh the table over here on the front end of my app, so that now I can see the new to-do in the front end of my app. Pause the video now and try setting this up for yourself. You will need to create a repeating group, a trigger for your Get To Do's action, and you will need to add a new event to your Create To Do action, as I have done. In the final part of this series, I'm going to show you how you can deploy your app into a live environment on a custom URL, how you can access the source code for your final application, and we'll take a quick look at what to do next in order to build increasingly complex apps using Didify.